What's up, guys? Thank you for clicking on the video. So everything is progressing forward and lots of projects coming up with the C5 Z06 and the Nissan Pathfinder WD21 first gen. Basically in this one I'm getting them cleaned up because, as you know from the previous video that I put up here, I am about to embark kind of on a lot of parts install here on the Pathfinder to get it back up to being desert worthy. Lots happening there, so I'm washing up the vehicle, and figured before I wash the vehicles and have the pressure washer out, I'm probably want to take some photos and do some photogrammetry, which is part of kind of like a 3D scanning process in a sense to design some parts on these cars. And I've been experimenting with some different methods, so I figured I would make a video and share with you those methods that I'm kind of experimenting with and show you kind of how the process works. It's an evolution for me, kind of learning new techniques, and so I figured I would share it in this video as I go, and maybe some of you guys out there might have some suggestions, I don't know, but that's what we're going to do in this one. I'm going to actually do some photos, and it's a lot of photos, and I'm going to show you how I put it in the computer and try and create a 3D mesh model. And then we're going to make some custom parts for both the Z06 and the Nissan Pathfinder, so stick around. You're watching Night Drive TV. So guys, I am finally getting everything in order. A lot of crazy things happened this year for a lot of people, me included. Had to actually move, just finally getting my area sorted out. Got an awesome new garage PC that is allows me to stay in here and not go inside. This is super cheap, guys. This setup here is so affordable. Everybody should have one of these in the garage. You could put up a video here, stream music over to the box, which I have going on. Lots of benefits there. Stick around, I'm gonna do a video on that. But in this one, like I said, I'm gonna show you this process, and I'm gonna use a product that's like a chalk spray. And so the idea is not that the Pathfinder has a very good paint job like the Corvette does. It's reflective and the computer can't see the surface. So this chalk that I'm gonna spray basically deadens the surface down and creates a texture. Now what I've wondered is it being white, if it's almost still kind of camouflaging the surface. So I'm gonna try a couple different techniques here. I'm gonna spray it white, take a bunch of pictures, and then I'm going to go over it and I'm gonna use like a chalk line. And I'm gonna try and give the computer something to work with. So we're gonna see which works better. So let's jump to it. Let's spray paint my cars. Chalk spray. Hopefully, theoretically, it's supposed to come off. Now this paint has a little bit of texture, so I've got the pressure washer out, and it's still kind of hard to detect some texture. And what the computer tries to do is line up all those photos that I showed you. So in this one, I'm gonna add some kind of a visual texture and see if it helps. What I'm gonna use here basically is a DeWalt kind of a chalk line for construction, and I'm gonna put this over it. It's gonna have some contrast with the white chalk paint, and we're gonna see if it helps. Let's just keep going with it. It's not going too well. I'm having a little bit of a difficulty. That kind of works. Kind of pushing it down along. I think the key is you just want to give the computer some kind of reference as the shots move around, so it can kind of figure out, okay, this shot is here, this shot's here, this shot's here. But then also give it the ability to see that there's curvature and kind of be able to calculate that curvature. So like I said, the key area where what I want to design for this truck is kind of right here. I really want the computer to understand what's going on right here, because it's very important to the design shape that's accurate. So I'm creating kind of a grid map, and hopefully it works. So let's see how that works. Take some pictures. I'm just going to spray this area here lightly. I'm not going to go real heavy on it. Basically, the car is pretty dirty, so you know, typically if somebody spray painted your car, if you got a lot of dust and dirt on there, you're not going to get much adhesion for the paint. That's obviously a poor paint prep, so to speak, is to put dirt all over your car. So it's a good opportunity to use this stuff, put this chalk line on it, and take a bunch of pictures, and then we'll jump over to the computer, and maybe I'll show you a little something at the end. I've questioned just kind of, in fact, on the black, why don't we try it? I'll just create kind of a visual flaw with a line and see if that helps it. Must say it's coming off quite easy. All right, so let me take some pictures and we'll see what happens in the computer. So first of all, I'm going to bring the pictures of the Pathfinder over into a program called Meshroom. Basically, I found that I didn't include all the pictures, so you'll see I add them here, kind of just add them to that file, and Meshroom is going to analyze all these photos, and you're going to see once I get them loaded into here, I'm going to kind of click through, and you'll see how essentially what's happening is I'm creating a step-by-step almost a 360 image in the sense, and what it's going to do is kind of interpolate all these images and create a complete structure digitally. So once I save the file name here, I'm going to go ahead and let it do its thing. Just hit start, and this is going to be a little bit of a process, and it's going to take a little bit of time, but here we're jumped forward, we're finished. You can see these different nodes, and as I bring up this screen, you're essentially going to see all these images of what looks like a little camera, and those are the positions it's identified that I took a photo from. And you can see I kind of went, you know, a couple different levels. That bottom level almost was identical, but essentially I wrapped around, changed positions, and so here I clicked load model, and it's now going to give me a visual of what it's put together. And so this is what we have here, and as I zoom in, you can see that the area that I really focused on was I only wanted that front corner of the fender, but I've really gotten halfway up the fender in a lot of different areas. So now we're going to jump over to a program called Blender with that file and open it in Blender, and this is where we're going to kind of eliminate a lot of this excess. And so when it first comes in, you have to figure out how it's oriented. It can often be random. As I zoom in, you can see this is the actual output mesh that it's created. It looks like a light, you know, coverage of snow or foam. So after I do a little trimming on Blender, I'm going to go ahead and then import that saved file into Fusion 360. And so as this loads, you're going to see how I trimmed this down essentially to the just the portion of the fender that I want to use. And so basically when I bring that in, I'm just going to do a little orientation basically and get it into alignment with how I want to use it. But you can see that's right above the corner light, about halfway up the wheel well. And so that's what we're going to start with. And so here you can see the mesh view. And I'm using just a kind of a forming feature that just creates like planes, formable planes, or essentially over that mesh form. And there's a lot of powerful tools here. You can see that Fusion 360 is a very complex program. You can basically build things in a myriad of different ways. But what I do here is I just kind of make a quick shape off of the front. And even though you see variation here, it's very minimal. So I just kind of align with the outer surface. Generally, it's kind of the average, I guess, so to speak. And so here I'm making a sketch of that section above the corner light, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to just create a little rectangle that provides kind of like the shape that I want. I'll select that line as a guide, and essentially what I'm going to do is just create a little piece that I can 3D print that's going to validate that I have the scaling and the sizing correct before I model a whole part. So heading over to the printer, I'm just going to do a quick clean of this surface, just basically an alcohol-based glass cleaner. You want a really sticky surface that has adhesion when warm, but releases when it's cold. That's kind of the recipe here. And you can see the printer laying down its first layer and in this case it's PLA plastic, but it's going to do 0.2 millimeters per layer and build up one after the other until it creates the part design. So this can be a time-consuming process depending on the size of a lot of different parameters. But here I just quickly make this part, and then I'm going to run outside and we're going to test the scale and fit. So essentially the goal was for this piece to just meet the edge and match the curvature. So looks like we're a little undersized here. So back to the computer, going into Fusion, I'm going to have to adjust the scale. And now while the mesh creation can show the shape and curvatures, the scale can sometimes become the issue. So I adjust that in just a small percentage, and then I create this part here. So this program here is Cura. This is what creates the slicing and the G code that the 3D printer runs off of. And here you can see I'm looking at each layer from the top down, and so this base layer, this raft, and then from there I look upward and look for any errors or any issues that I think it's going to run into, and hit print. All right, guys, so what happened? That's what we're going to get into in this phase. Number one, what happened with the Bronco-inspired part for the Pathfinder? How did it fit? And also, what's up with the Corvette? So how did the cove turn out? Did I get it? Where are the bezels? All these things are just ahead here. So first, let's start with the Pathfinder. Essentially, as you can see, I did tweak the scale a little bit. Did get to a point that I felt like using the digital measuring tools in Fusion that it was accurate. So I went ahead and designed a part. As you can see, that part came off the printer and is here on the Pathfinder. I can tell you that I do think that it works with the styling of the vehicle. I think I'm probably going to bring the profile down a little bit. I'm going to work on the design area in front by the corner light. It's going to kind of do a wraparound around the front, I think, is the direction I'm going to take. It needs to be fairly robust, and if you look at a recently released video from the 2020 Bronco Overland, they got so many different editions, Sasquatch, all this stuff. You can see that they actually used this feature on the Bronco to mount a CB antenna. So a tall wet antenna with a lot of like dynamic load imparting sideways on that mount. Now in that particular use, you can tell that they're probably pretty robust. I will try my best to make this as robust as possible just directly out of the printer by basically you can control infill, how dense the part is, and this is not dense, but it's still extremely strong. So if I increase density, you can definitely get to a point to where if it's anchored well and it has good metal inserts, it's going to be pretty strong. So that's what I'm going to do with that. So I think I like it. I like the look of it. When things come out from a major OEM, from a stylistic standpoint, people's eyes start to receive it better. If I'd have done this a year ago and nobody'd ever seen anything like that, it may be like, well, that's kind of weird. I don't know. But essentially, I think the Bronco has kind of softened people's perceptions of it. And I think it's a pretty cool mod. I'll probably do it in black ABS. I could wrap it in carbon. I've thought about that for a last level of structural integrity and support. Basically vacuum carbon around it, trim it, clear it, and just have a carbon part on here. That's kind of resto modish, so to speak. So that's the Pathfinder, guys. Currently I have the springs torn out of this thing. I have the rear end. That video is coming shortly. The whole Pathfinder is just undergoing this crazy level up. So stay tuned for that, obviously. And obviously these parts and things like that, I may put them on Thingiverse for you to print. I hope you kind of got some insight into the process here. But let's jump over to the Corvette. So I did scan those coves. The cove 3D panels, the layout of it was pretty solid. So I was pretty impressed with it. It looks like it's something I can design off of, and the reason that I did that was because I kind of already have some parts made for that region, and essentially what I want to do though is for fitment concerns and for molding characteristics, so to speak, and techniques. I want to be able to make a few different parts that fit in that area and actually go into the wheel well to relieve pressure from either the wheel well area or the engine bay, something like that. So lots of ideas that I have there that I'm going to kind of work into. The bezels were the last thing that I started working on, and they're very close to complete fitment. I obviously have the sleepy eye set up on the Corvette, and so I decided I was going to make myself some bezels. I just run the single low beams, so I designed the bezel for that, but I'm adding the high beams here momentarily for fitment. So basically, you know, this is a great tool, guys. If you're not really super technologically savvy, that doesn't mean you can't buy a printer and actually make a lot of things at home. If you notice the Creality brand that I have, there's an Ender 3 Pro, and it's a printer that's kind of desktop size, very small, $259 I think, and you can go on Thingiverse and you can download all kind of things for household goods and gaming and just literally anything. You could run a search in there. I made a GoPro housings, a few designs that I took from other people, and it's allowed. It's a Creative Commons licensing to where anybody can use it. You just can't use it for profit. You can download something on there for your own personal use. So you could print that out, and it's very accessible. You don't need to use all these programs that I talked about. But it's really impressive to be able to sit down, you know, in your own home and make something like this in a very rapid way. If you have a shop, if you have, you know, a custom car business, or you're just big as a hobbyist, I mean, this is a tool you have to get into, I think. It's something that's critical to the creative process. And I just think back to when I had my shops, you know, years back, and I thought, man, the things I could have done with this tool are mind-blowing. I was like, I just can't imagine what I would have been doing when I was really at the peak of building forced induction systems, doing a lot of one-off setups and tube chassis cars and things. I'm like, this would have changed the game in so many different ways for me. But I was pulling molds from my hoods in 2001 in my bedroom, second bedroom, before I had my shops, and obviously got into TIG fabrication and more metal. So I've kind of spent a lot of years thinking in terms of metal. When you get into the digital realm, to where you take something very analog and literal, like a vehicle, take photos of it, and to see it be able to be translated digitally to where you can design what your mind kind of thinks of, as long as you can manipulate the software, and then literally hours later or one day later have something back analog in your hand. It's kind of Jetsons, you know what I mean? If you're from my era or older, it's kind of Jetsons. They would hit a button on the cartoon and it would just appear, and it's not quite that quick, but I mean, I think in a translated sense, you know, it is that quick. It's pretty crazy, because something like I put on this Pathfinder or these bezels, I mean, you would have had to have a large group kind of investment to basically create molds, either by clay, and which clay I've done on my Corvette in the past, and pulled molds from using Chavant clay, and that's how the OEMs do it. But you know, you would have to either clay that part, make a fiberglass piece, you would have to prototype it out of metal, then they would, you know, a company that could make molds and produce that in large scale in plastic, you would have to have so many parts and so many people interested. The large market would have to be behind it. You know, with this, 10 people could want this, and you could provide it to them in a very efficient and affordable way. So it's a huge game changer, and there's not a lot of shops using it. This is still, even though this technology, I first saw this at SEMA in 2010, I can tell you that the majority of shops and most people aren't using this still. So there's just so much that you can do with this. And as metal, printing aluminum, printing carbon fiber, I see all these things coming. The processes are getting more affordable. 10 more years from now, I would not be surprised if I could design and print, you know, an entire engine assembly, a rotating assembly, or even an engine block that's functional. And I think that's very feasible. So to get, you know, integrated with yourself in the software and just trickle over time. You don't have to become a master of it in a day. In 5 years from now, you're comfortable enough with it to make some things. You know, I do think that a lot's going to be available to really go to the next level from an engineering perspective in your own home. So I hope this video kind of gave you some insight, guys, into things I'm doing, things I will be doing. As is my nature, I'm going to start off with small parts and I'm going to go as big as possible. So expect that I'm going to scan the entire Corvette and do a whole printed wide body and vents on the hood and all kind of other things. So subscribe if you haven't, guys. I appreciate it. The channel has grown. I've hit 6,000 subs less than a year. I'm 11 months in, so if you're still with me, I appreciate it. Throw me a like, comment. Always enjoy that, and seeing what you guys think. So catch you on the next one. Thank you for watching Night Drive TV.